I'm John from Great Lakes Country, and today we're trying out the Bighorn Santa Maria style grill. Last year, a company named Bighorn reached out and asked if they could send me their pellet-fired pizza oven to try out. So I did, and I was thoroughly impressed with it. So when this year they reached out and asked if I'd be interested in trying their new Santa Maria style grill, I said absolutely. So in this video, we're gonna be reviewing it, doing some test cooks. I'll show a quick cut of the assembly process, how it all goes together, and then of course, share my overall opinions and insights on what I think about this Santa Maria grill. So let's get right into it and real quick show how this whole thing gets assembled. First, I'll get the 4 legs attached to the firebox with a few screws. Then I'll flip the whole thing over and set on the bottom shelf. Secure that with a few more screws. Now on go the wheels. They simply screw in. Flipping it right side up, and I'll attach the upper grate support with a few more screws. Next is the wheel lock assembly. Then I'll screw on the handle. Then attach the main cart handle to the side of the firebox. Screw one more handle onto the wheel, put the wheel in place and secure it with a couple screws, and on goes the side shelf brackets along with the folding shelf. And I might as well use the included bottle opener. Now I can set the grate platform in place and get it secured to the steel cables with a couple more screws. Nice and even, and it goes up and down very smoothly. Lastly, the grease tray clips onto the grate and the firebox ash tray slides into place. And that's it. Not too bad, just a few screws, a couple of nuts. It goes together pretty easily in maybe about half an hour or so. Next, I think we need to jump right in and just do a test cook. I've got this thing fired up. I got some hot coals into the firebox, some hardwood, it's starting to burn. And for the maiden cook, it only makes sense to do the quintessential Santa Maria cut, and that's a beef tri-tip. We're gonna do some other things after that, of course, but we definitely need to start with the go-to thing that everybody wants to cook on a Santa Maria grill. So here is our absolute beast of a tri-tip. This thing is coming in at just about 4 pounds, and it's looking beautiful, and it's gonna be an amazing cut of meat to do our first cook on this grill. And there's not a whole lot I'm gonna do to get it ready. You know, as usual, if I see any especially scraggly bits hanging off and dangling, things that are probably gonna get burnt up, even this little hunk right here, which kind of pains me to cut off, but I think it needs to go. Any weird looking silver skin, you know, a little bit of the fat on this backside I'm gonna take down. Now this backside has an enormous fat cap, and as much as I'd love to just leave it all intact, I do think that I'm gonna need to shave that down a little bit. When I kind of look at it from the side, it's really quite enormous, and it's just probably gonna be too thick for what we want here. So I'm gonna very carefully just shave that down all over, do my best not to scalp any of the actual meat, you know, pretty much like we would do with something like a brisket. But you know that I'm gonna save this fat for something else. Sausage making. All right, I think that's looking pretty good to me. So now all I need to do is get it seasoned up. And season it up however you like, but today I'm going with some classic Santa Maria style seasoning, one of my favorites. And we're just gonna get a pretty generous coating of that seasoning all over all the different sides and surfaces. You know, this is a thick piece of meat, so we're going on pretty heavy. If you haven't made a tri-tip using some of this style of seasoning before, you really need to try it out. There's some herbs in there, lots of garlic, of course, some salt. Definitely will give you that quintessential open fire tri-tip sort of experience. Now we're just gonna leave this right here on the board for probably about 15 more minutes. I've had it sitting out for about 20 minutes already. You definitely wanna take it out of the fridge at least half an hour before you plan to start grilling. You need to let the temperature of this thing start to come up to get a proper and even cook once we grill. All right, we've got some really good looking fire. Our hardwood is probably about, I don't know, halfway burnt up, which lets us move it around a little bit, break it up, but we're still getting lots of good hot fire. Now, contrary to what some people say, Santa Maria style grilling isn't quite the same as Argentinian style grilling. Where Argentinian style uses coals, Santa Maria style uses actual live fire. And that's why it's so important to be able to raise this grate up so high away from it so we don't burn anything. But we are gonna start pretty close to those flames. Now, there's a few different trains of thought on the best way to do a tri-tip on this style of grill, and this is how I do it. We start off with the grate super low and hot so we can develop a really great sear and crust on both sides of that steak. Then after just a few minutes of that, we'll raise it up pretty high, and then it'll stay up there for the rest of the cook. So everything's looking pretty good. You know, the rule of thumb for where I want to start this is if I can hold my hand just above the grate for no more than about 4 seconds, then that's the heat that I want. That is pretty hot, but that's what we're going for. Now we're just gonna let it sear, flipping it every couple of minutes until we get a great looking crust on both sides. Already, the smell out here is just incredible. It's already looking great. And I do have my wireless probe thermometer right in there from the very beginning because I don't like to screw around when it comes to cooking a steak perfectly. I want to know precisely what that internal temperature is so I know precisely when to take it off the heat. Anyway, we'll just keep flipping it every couple minutes until the outside is looking where we want it. And then we're raising that grill up. All right, I'm really liking what I'm seeing, and I think we're just about ready to raise this thing up. Now, the rule of thumb for the next step is to raise it up until you can hold your hand over that grate for about 10 seconds. But not really any more than that. We're at about 10 seconds here, but once I add some wood and that really gets going, well, we're probably gonna have to raise it up even a little bit higher. Anyway, from here, we're just letting it cook away. A Santa Maria style grill is not one that you can just walk away from. You pretty much need to keep your attention on it. And we're gonna be turning that meat pretty frequently, like every 5 minutes. And over the next, let's say, hour to hour and a half, we're gonna bring the internal temperature of that meat up to 123 degrees. That's about the sweet spot where I like to take it off, let it rest, little carryover heat will bring it right up to that perfect medium rare that I like. It's pretty hard to see this screen out in the sun, but here I've got the app for my wireless thermometer probe. You can see that our ambient right now is about 274 degrees, which is looking great. The internal temperature of that meat is only at 49, so we got a ways to go. But anyway, we're gonna jump ahead a little while because this thing's gonna take some time. And since I've got a little bit of time to just wait around, I might as well talk about a few of the aspects of this grill. Something that I noticed pretty soon is that this little grease dripping tray that hangs off the front. Well, it's a little clumsy, and as long as you don't mess with it, it'll stay in place. But if you bump it even a little bit, it very well may fall right off. But it is working perfectly as intended. As grease and fat kind of drips off the meat, it runs along these little channels right into that grease tray. I will say I'm a little concerned that by the end of this cook, this thing's gonna be overflowing. It's probably already about a third of the way full, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And you know, for a relatively compact sized Santa Maria style grill, it does hold a lot of fire. I can arrange a lot of firewood in there, possibly a little too much, because I actually wouldn't mind if this grill could raise up even higher. I'm pretty much at the top before my meat's gonna hit the ceiling there. And that really means that I'm gonna have to pay attention to my fire management. It's not really a big deal. My temperature is really just where I want it. But if I had any more fire than that, I might start risk a little bit of burning. I do really like the rack underneath it where I can stack a few of my wood splits for easy access when I need to add some. I do like this little side shelf, and for storage it does fold out of the way, which is pretty convenient. But I'll mention that about a third of this thing gets to be really too hot to even touch or maybe even set much on without risk of it melting or me burning my hand when I go to pick it up. So this shelf is nice, but I'm pretty much only using about this much of the end of it. The crank wheel works great. It's perfectly smooth. No complaints there. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. It really only has one job, and it's doing it perfectly fine. Right now, I'd say that this grill is pretty much the perfect size for, well, for me, definitely, but up to, I'd say, a small family. I mean, we're gonna do some other cooks, we're gonna have some chicken and some other things, but I mean, realistically, I could have put, 3 or 4 of these tri-tips on there if I really had to. might be pushing it a little bit. It'll hold everything you need for a family barbecue. And I personally don't really need much more than that. All right, we're about, I don't know, 20 minutes later, and our internal temp is rated 83 degrees. Everything's looking good so far. I did end up shifting some of my burning wood over to the one side a little bit, just to kind of help regulate that heat a little more. We were getting quite a bit of heat, even with this grate raised about as high as it can go. So like I said before, fire management is still going to be a component of using this grill. You can't just rely 100% on the height of the grill adjustment for maintaining and controlling those temperatures. But that's okay. A Santa Maria grill is not a set it and forget it proposition. It's definitely a little bit more of a hands-on way to cook some meat. All right, internal temperature is probing at 123 degrees, right in the middle. So it's time to take this thing off the fire. So I'll get my thermometer probe out of there. And now we have to let it rest for just a little bit. So I'll get it wrapped loosely in some foil. And now we just gotta wait 10, 15 minutes. Then we can slice in and see how we did. All right, let's get into this tri-tip and see how we did. Now, of course, these tri-tips, they've got grains running in 2 different directions. So the first thing we need to do is find where that direction changes and cut it in half. That's because we want to, of course, cut against the grain when we serve. And let's see how we look. Oh yeah, that is beautiful. Sometimes on the camera, it doesn't accurately reflect the doneness, but I'd say that's looking pretty much right to me. I'm not sure if that's medium rare or even a little closer to rare, but whatever it is, it looks and smells delicious. So why don't we cut up some slices and have a taste? And you know I'm gonna need to make it all pretty for my YouTube thumbnail. So let's get some of these arranged out on the board here. And I know this is a California style steak and a California style way of cooking this steak. But you know, it's still got some similarities to the Argentinian style, and it could only make everything even more delicious to spoon over a little bit of some delicious fresh chimichurri. I actually made this earlier today. Super simple. We're just throwing together some fresh flat leaf parsley, salt, pepper, oregano, crushed red pepper flake, a dash of red wine vinegar, blend it all up, stir in some olive oil, and just let it sit for a couple hours before serving. Let all those flavors meld together. But that right there is what I call a really good looking platter of some beautiful tri-tip steak. All right, how about we dig in and have ourselves a bite? Beautiful crust on there. You know, in hindsight, I probably could have trimmed down even a little bit more of that fat. You know, that was a pretty thick rind of fat that half rendered, didn't fully render. Some of it's pretty darn tender and tasty. Some of it's still a little chewy. But that meat inside, oh man, tender, juicy, wonderfully seasoned, just delicious. And if you've never tried it before, do yourself a favor and make some of that chimichurri. Anyway, I'd call that tri-tip a success. The Santa Maria Grill did exactly what it's supposed to. And though tri-tip is the, you know, staple cut to cook on one of these things, any kind of steak is gonna work great on it. That flexibility to adjust the grates up and down quite a bit, that's gonna help perfect any kind of live fire grilled steak, whether or not you use open fire or just charcoal. Anyway, I'm gonna eat some more of this, get all cleaned up, and then we're gonna jump ahead to probably tomorrow, where we're gonna reset everything and fire this grill back up and cook us some chicken. As for cleaning these grill grates after my cook, well, I'm hoping they scrub nice and clean, but to help it along a little bit, I've got the grates lowered to about as low as they'll go, really let the rest of the flames that I got in that firebox do some of the work and burning off as much of that stuff as possible. So hopefully by the end, all I have to do is maybe scrape off a little bit of a layer of carbon rather than, you know, chiseling and scrubbing away at that burnt on meat and juices and fat and so forth. And I'm happy to report that my little grease drippings tray did not overflow. But, you know, if I had 2 great big pieces of meat on there releasing grease, I'm pretty certain that it would have overflowed at some point. And while the angled grooves of the grill grate on this style of grill makes it a little trickier to clean than your ordinary kind of flat grill grates, it still does scrub clean relatively easily. With a good grill brush, you can definitely get all that gunk knocked down. Obviously, that steel is going to be permanently discolored from all that heat and grease and so forth, but, well, I'll just look at that as seasoning. Anyway, after going at it with the grill brush for just a couple minutes, I'll get a little bit of cooking oil on some paper towel and just give it a quick wipe clean, and that's it. Now we're ready for the next cook. Now for cleaning out the firebox, well, that's even simpler. All we need to do is slide out the ash collection tray, empty it out, and we're ready to go again. Another feature I really like about this grill is that it's got 4 swiveling casters, and they all lock so you can keep the thing in place once you get it where you want it. But I'm a big fan of the 4 independent swiveling casters because it makes moving it around any which way just as easy as it can be. And you may have heard my complaints in previous grill and smoker review videos where they've only got a couple of wheels and you essentially got to drag the thing around by one end. I really hope that the 4 swiveling casters becomes pretty much the standard for any kind of outdoor cooking appliance. So definitely a big fan of these wheels. All right, for this cook, I think we're gonna go primarily charcoal. Just do some good old grilled chicken. So I'll get my chimney full of lump charcoal going. And we'll get a little extra charcoal in there while we're at it. All right, let's get our chicken ready. Here, I've got a couple of great looking chicken quarters, big old thigh, big old drumstick. These are gonna be absolutely great on a grill like this. And what I'm ultimately going for is some delicious crispy skin on these. And yeah, I could have dry brined these, let them sit in the fridge overnight. But when I'm grilling, especially over pretty high heat, I really do like to give them a light coat of some oil. Just rub some on there. It's gonna help the seasoning stick, sure, but it's also gonna help keep these pieces of chicken from sticking to the grill grate. I'm not really gonna do any trimming. I think these look just fine to me. Yeah, I could get this little bit off here, but that's just gonna crisp up and become extra tasty. And now I'll just go down with some of my favorite chicken rub. Lots of good flavors in there, pretty turmeric heavy. Gonna get a beautiful yellowish color to these as they cook. The salt content's pretty modest in this rub, so I'm gonna go down really quite heavy. Do the other side. Now I'll just let these sit here on the board for a couple more minutes until our coals are ready, and then they're going on. And we're also gonna be doing some veggies with our chicken. So here I've got some nice corn on the cob. I grill my corn without the husk, without foil, anything like that. It's super easy and it comes out beautifully. All I really need to do is rub a little bit of olive oil all over each one of these, and then season with whatever you like. Today, I think I'm gonna go some ordinary good old salt, pepper, garlic. As heavy or as light as you want. I like to go on kind of heavy with my seasoning on the corn on the cob, but do whatever you like. Do a Mexican street corn style with some tahini seasoning or some lemon pepper or the same rub that you'd use on your chicken. You really can't go wrong. And now these guys are ready for the grill. And when those coals are good and hot, in they go. And we'll just sort of get them incorporated with the rest of that charcoal I dumped in there so everything gets nice and lit. And while we're at it, I'll throw in just a couple little mini chunks of some hardwood. Add just a little bit of smoky flavor to the mix. All right, those coals are looking great, so on our chicken goes. And while we're at it, we'll get that corn on there, and we're just gonna kind of keep an eye on these to make sure they're not getting too much heat. We want to cook them just a little bit slower than the chicken and keep those moving around. So just like we did with the tri-tip, I'll keep an eye on my temperatures, raise that grill up as needed to make sure we're not getting too much heat. We got to bring those chicken thighs and legs to about 185 degrees internal. And the corn, we're just going to go until it's got a very light char all the way around. Right off the bat, I think I need a little more height. And as those coals start to die down a little bit more, I'm sure I'll be lowering that back down. And we've got a couple other veggies coming into the mix in just a couple minutes. Chicken's looking and smelling great. Corn's coming along nicely. So I think it's just about time to bring in the rest of our veggies. Here I've got some wonderful marinated portobello mushrooms and some marinated thick slices of onion, which I absolutely love cooking on a grill like this. Get them nice and caramelized, a little light char all over them. That marinade will help us along and also add a little bit of lubrication to the mix. Definitely keep an eye on these onions and mushrooms. We don't want them to burn, but they may end up being done a little before the chicken, which is perfectly okay. Starting to get some great char on the corn right there. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Just keep those moving around. Coals are still looking good. I did add a couple of more little mini splits of wood on there just to make sure we keep that heat up. But everything's going great. I'm getting hungry, and it shouldn't be a whole lot longer before we're ready to eat. All right, corn's coming off. Chicken needs just a couple more minutes, as do the onions and mushrooms. Some beautiful looking char on these chicken thighs and legs. Exactly what I'm looking for. All right, our onions are soft and amazing, so they're coming off. Mushrooms, tender, but not soggy. Beautiful color on those. And last but not least, our chicken is temping about 185 internal, so off it comes. So what do you say we make ourselves a plate and dig in? Beautiful corn on the cob, some of our amazing grilled onion, why not? And of course, those marinated mushrooms. And of course, I have microphone problems right at the best part. But oh well, I'll just have to voice over this part. This plate of food is looking amazing. I'm starving, so I'm going in. I'm so hungry, I'm not even gonna bother separating this leg and thigh. Absolutely delicious, beautifully crispy skin. Great taste. I love that color on there from the turmeric and the flames. That's what a piece of grilled chicken should look like. The corn on the cob, I already know that's gonna be delicious. I make it like this all the time. But I gotta say, I've been smelling those marinated portobello mushrooms this whole time, and I'm really excited to finally take a bite out of one of those. Perfect texture, perfect little bit of crispy around the edges, not soggy, not mushy, just the right bite. So that means all that's left is that grilled onion. Tender, a little caramelized, great color, great seasoning. Also soaked in that same marinade, which by the way is nothing special. Just some ordinary Italian dressing with a little extra vinegar added in. Well, I'm gonna destroy the rest of this plate of food before it gets any colder, but we got one more cook to do. So we'll pick it back up in just a little while because there's just a small amount of prep work we have to do to get ready for the third and final cook tomorrow. And that third cook we're doing is gonna be some amazing Chinese barbecue char siu pork. So here I've got a way bigger than necessary boneless pork shoulder, and we're gonna be using 2 pounds of this for this particular cook. And we're gonna wanna cut us some pieces that are somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, 2 inches wide, maybe 3 inches thick, and, well, I guess about as long as this pork shoulder is. And there's a couple of different ways you can trim these and cut these following the muscle groups and whatever. I think we're gonna keep it pretty simple. So just to get some nice chunks off of here, I think the first thing I'm gonna do is just slice this end off to square it up a little bit. And maybe if we just cut a couple of great big thick chunks, that's gonna be about perfect for what we need. Now this pork shoulder's got a lot of fat all throughout it, including this great big fat cap on the side. And the fattiness of a pork shoulder is part of what makes this dish so tasty. But I do want to trim a little bit of that off, especially this ribbon of fat on the outside. This thing's not really gonna be on the grill long enough for that to all render down beautifully like it might on a smoked pulled pork or something like that. So we're just gonna give this thing a little bit of love. Something about like that's looking pretty good to me. Now I'll just cut me one more slice about like that. All right, here we've got our 2 pieces. They total up almost exactly 2 pounds. As for all the rest of this pork, well, I'll just package this up and end up using it for something else. All right, now let's make the marinade for this char siu pork. And don't worry about quantities. I'm gonna put links in the video description to the recipes for basically all the different stuff that I made in this video. Anyway, into a bowl, we got some kosher salt, white sugar, Chinese 5-spice, white pepper, some hoisin sauce, a little black strap molasses, some Shaoxing cooking wine, just a touch of sesame oil, a tablespoon or so of minced up garlic, and optionally, if you really want to get that Chinese carry-out authenticity, about 10 drops of some red food coloring. Now we'll just get all of that whisked together, and our marinade is ready. Now I'm sure you see where we're going with this. We're gonna get those pieces of pork into a gallon Ziploc bag and carefully pour in all of that marinade. Close it up and give everything a good squish. Move it all around, make sure all that pork has some coverage with that marinade. Now this pork's going in the fridge overnight. So we're gonna jump ahead to tomorrow and fire up the grill once again. All right, it's the next day, and we're just about ready to start grilling our beautiful Char Siu pork. So I'll get these pieces of pork out of that marinade, and I'll let whatever wants to drip off of them, and then just get them laid out on this sheet here. As for the rest of that marinade in the bag, well, we're definitely keeping that because we need to make ourselves a basting sauce. So I'll just get all of that little bit of marinade left in there into my little cast iron pan here. There's not a whole lot of marinade to work with, so we are gonna add a couple things. First, about a tablespoon of honey, give or take, and about a tablespoon of vegetable oil, and a 1/4 cup of water. I'll get that all mixed together. And now I'm just gonna put this on the stove over medium-low heat, bring it up to a gentle simmer, and just let it simmer for about 10 minutes. We did have raw pork swimming around in that marinade, so I don't mind the idea of heating it up for that reason, but ultimately it won't really matter since it's getting brushed onto this pork while it's still grilling. All right, Santa Maria Grill is fired back up. We've got a great bed of coals, a little bit of live fire in there, and it's finally time to throw on our beautiful pork. I'll let that first side get a good hard sear for about 3 minutes. Then I'll give them a flip, let that other side sear up a little bit. Then I'll raise the grate up a little bit so we're not getting so much of a hard sear. And now we're just grilling until the internal temperature reaches about 160 degrees. And when that pork gets to about 100 degrees, I'm gonna start brushing with my basting sauce. Just a light coat each time I'm gonna flip, and a little on the top side. Add some more amazing flavor, keep that exterior from drying out too much. Just keep turning about every 3 to 5 minutes. Keep basting and keep an eye on that heat and adjust the height of that grill grate as needed. We want to bring this pork up to temperature sort of gradually. That's how you get some of that fat rendered down. That's how you avoid burning the outside by the time the inside is done. Anyway, let's jump ahead a little bit more to when these are done and we're ready to take them off. All right, this pork is looking great. It's finished cooking, so it's time to pull it off of there. All right, let's slice up one of these beautiful pieces of pork. And that's what I'm talking about. Tender, juicy, beautiful on the inside, even more beautiful on the outside. Just a tiny touch of char on there. The smell coming off of this is insane, and I can't wait to take a bite. But before I do that, I need to make myself a plate, or rather a bowl, by starting with a lovely bed of some white rice, and we'll lay down a generous serving of those Char Siu pork slices. And just because us Americans think that every Asian dish needs to be garnished, we'll add a little bit of green onion and just a light sprinkle of some sesame seeds. And there we have it, amazing Char Siu pork grilled on the Santa Maria. Let's dig in. Tender, juicy, perfect. The flavor of a Char Siu pork is unlike any other flavors in the Asian cuisine category, at least that I might encounter in this country around these parts. But there's just so much flavor packed into that marinade. It's a little sweet. That Chinese 5-spice just adds so much to it. And honestly, it's not really any different or more difficult than barbecuing any kind of marinated meat. Just grill it. Watch your temperature. Reapply the basting sauce or the marinade as needed. Bring it up to temperature. So after having done 3 complete, very different cooks on the Bighorn Santa Maria, what do I think of it? As I said earlier, if you're cooking for between, let's say, 1 and 4 people, this grill is an outstanding size. They make way huger Santa Maria grills, just like they make bigger and smaller grills of any kind. But if you really like a hands-on approach to grilling, managing the fire, and really paying attention to your cook, then the Santa Maria is a great option. If you're looking for set it and forget it, this isn't the right kind of grill for you. But if you think maybe you want to try it out, but you don't want to spend thousands on a big time Santa Maria grill like you maybe see on some of your favorite barbecuing YouTube channels, this Bighorn is about the least expensive full featured Santa Maria grill that I've seen anywhere. You know, they make different kind of modules that you can put onto a a Weber or other kind of grill, this thing is the full grill. It's got everything you need, plenty of features, plenty of functionality. It's gonna do exactly what you need it to do. I personally happen to prefer the Santa Maria Grill over a traditional, ordinary, regular charcoal grill. I really like how much temperature control I have by that pretty large distance. I can move the grate up and down. I like that I can move the grate all the way up and have very easy access to my coal bed and the firebox to move things around or add more wood or coals as needed. If I had to have one complaint, well, it's not even really a complaint. It's just a matter of fact at a price point like this. And that's that the steel isn't the thickest. And if you use this particular grill religiously day after day for years, well, eventually I'd be willing to bet that some of that metal is going to rust through from all that heat. But that happens on basically every kind of grill. So it's not really a bug so much as just a matter of fact. Anyway, if you want to check out the Bighorn Santa Maria Grill for yourself, I will put a link in the video description below. Last I saw, they were running a pretty hefty sale on this grill. Don't know if it's still going on by the time this video goes live, but check it out. In the meantime, I'm going to finish eating some of that delicious pork with that white rice. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future cooking, grilling, and product review videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Great Lakes Country.